What happens when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez makes the fatal miscalculation of insulting a man's physical height, not realizing Ben Shapiro holds the receipts to her entire financial reality right on his smartphone? Watch closely as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez steps into Cooper Union expecting a spectacular triumph, only to watch Ben Shapiro systematically dismantle her political empire in exactly 23 minutes. Go ahead and hit the like button right now, because over the course of the next 45 minutes, this 5'9" Burbank native, who initiated his journalism career at the age of 17, will meticulously deconstruct her carefully crafted image. He accomplishes this unprecedented feat utilizing her own custom dress designer, her diamond engagement ring, and a single social media tweet she published 3 weeks prematurely. Subscribe to the channel and brace yourself, because there is absolutely no timeline where you do not share this incredible footage with everyone you know. The tension. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gripped the sparkling diamond on her left hand with such intense, unyielding pressure that the metallic band left a stark white indentation deeply embedded in her skin. She had not taken an audible intake of breath for 11 agonizing seconds. Directly across the stage from her, illuminated softly by the ornate Cooper Union chandeliers, Ben Shapiro's iPhone screen remained brightly lit. The device was displaying a solitary, undeniable line item originating from a brother's invoice, formally dated the 4th of October 2021. The document revealed a glaring truth. The extravagant dress had cost $300 to rent. The exclusive event ticket had cost a staggering $30,000, yet the vendor responsible for the garment had remained entirely unpaid for 6 entire months. To fully comprehend how the nation's most heavily followed female political figure found herself clinging desperately to her engagement ring like a maritime flotation device, we must rewind. We must look back 23 minutes to observe how a man she publicly derided as a hobbit with a podcast systematically exposed the financial reality of her own life. She had committed the ultimate cardinal New York sin. She simply assumed the ghost of Abraham Lincoln was not listening to the lecture hall. The opening salvo. Her initial aggressive offensive launched precisely at the 3rd minute of the evening, projecting the practiced, unwavering confidence of a woman who had successfully delivered this identical introductory speech across 23 different college campuses. Ocasio-Cortez commanded the microphone. She proudly and clearly identified herself to the audience as a woman of color and the resilient daughter of a working-class single mother. She reminded the crowd that a mere 5 years prior, she was laboring as a bartender at Flat's Fix, located just 2 miles away from the very building they sat in. She sharply contrasted her humble background with her opponent's current status, mocking his lucrative financial arrangement with the Daily Wire and his luxurious 6-figure podcasting studio nestled in Tennessee. The sprawling progressive wing of the 800-seat auditorium erupted into immediate, validating applause. Simultaneously, 2 esteemed NYU professors seated on the stage panel nodded their heads in vigorous, absolute agreement. Arrayed in a striking scarlet pantsuit complemented by bold gold hoop earrings, Ocasio-Cortez repeatedly touched her 1.5-carat engagement ring. The precious stone caught the chandelier's light with every subtle movement of her left hand. Tonight, she was manipulating the jewelry far more frequently than her usual demeanor dictated. The silent adversary. Meanwhile, situated across the vast stage, Ben Shapiro had not yet uttered a single syllable. He had previously entered the venue through an inconspicuous side door, entirely unaccompanied. He brought no supporting staff members and carried no traditional briefcase. He possessed merely 3 simple items: an iPhone, a meticulously kept leather-bound moleskin notebook, and a single unbranded bottle of water. A traditional yarmulke rested firmly on his head, secured securely by a simple bobby pin, he had faithfully utilized for 14 consecutive years. He stood exactly 5 feet and 9 inches tall in his footwear. Ocasio-Cortez, however, was far from finished with her relentless verbal barrage. She boldly juxtaposed her supposedly genuine working-class roots with Shapiro's suburban Burbank upbringing. She dismissively categorized his hometown for the viewing audience as a privileged Los Angeles neighborhood exclusively populated by wealthy television producers. She openly scoffed at his childhood experiences within a 2-bedroom home, refusing to be impressed by his life inside what she deemed a literal entertainment industry enclave. Bathing warmly in the ensuing wave of audience applause, she angled herself slightly toward Shapiro. She wore the manufactured smile of a political figure who had thoroughly rehearsed her devastating closing remark directly in front of her personal stylist. She patronizingly offered respect to his religious traditions before launching her final, deeply personal attack. She publicly questioned the profound irony of a man wearing the sacred head covering of a faith historically rooted in justice, while dedicating his entire professional career to opposing the very forms of justice that modern working people desperately require. Finally, she callously dismissed his vast media empire as nothing more than a career built upon shouting angrily at college freshmen. She pointedly and mockingly noted that the vast majority of those students were in fact physically taller than he was. The progressive faction of the audience laughed uproariously at the jab. She had successfully delivered 3 meticulously targeted insults encompassing class identity, religious faith, and physical height in a span of just 2 minutes. Ocasio-Cortez retook her seat with the impeccable timing of a seasoned performer who was absolutely certain that the forthcoming 90 seconds of the debate would belong entirely to her dominance. The rebuttal begins. Ben Shapiro offered absolutely no immediate emotional retort to the barrage. Instead, he calmly retrieved his leather-bound moleskin notebook from the podium. He methodically clicked his pen open and proceeded to inscribe 3 deliberate lines into the paper, using handwriting that was remarkably small and exact. He carefully underlined 2 of those specific sentences. 12 agonizing seconds ticked silently by in the grand hall. Then, 14 seconds elapsed. The immense audience began to physically shift in their seats, sensing an unexpected shift in the atmospheric tension. The appointed moderator nervously shifted her gaze from Shapiro down to her prepared notes, and then back up to Shapiro once more. Ultimately, he set the writing instrument down on the wooden surface. He smoothly pulled the microphone closer to his mouth to begin. When his voice finally echoed through the room, the signature rapid-fire cadence that had successfully built him a massive podcasting empire arrived exactly the way a professional fastball smacks into a catcher's leather mitt. It was not overwhelmingly loud, but it was flawlessly and precisely placed for maximum impact. He addressed the Congresswoman directly, outlining 3 specific points of contention. First, he factually clarified that the median household income in the city of Burbank during 1990, the year he turned 4 years old, was a highly modest $42,000. He vividly described a cramped family of 6 individuals sharing a small 2-bedroom house. He revealed that his father was forced to play the piano for local car dealership commercials simply to afford purchasing shoes for his 3 growing sisters. He firmly stated that the elite producer-filled suburb she imagined was a total fabrication, entirely disconnected from the reality of the neighborhood where he was actually raised. He paused for a fraction of a second to let the truth resonate. Second, he openly acknowledged his exact physical height of 5 feet 9 inches. He noted that this measurement represents the exact median height for all adult males residing in the United States. He confirmed he had been fully aware of this anatomical fact since he was 14 years old. He then brutally pointed out that her bizarre decision to dedicate a significant portion of her opening statement to his physical stature revealed far less about his biology and far more about her severe lack of intellectual preparation. He lightly tapped the cover of his moleskin notebook for acoustic emphasis. For his third and final introductory point, he stated that he had dedicated 36 uninterrupted minutes to preparing substantive, factual notes for their evening debate. He contrasted this by observing that she had apparently spent an equal amount of time polishing the specific segment where she referred to him as a mythical hobbit. Therefore, out of profound respect for her valuable time and the time of the 800 hard-working New Yorkers who had sacrificed an evening to attend, he politely requested permission to formally begin the serious discussion. The progressive section of the seating arrangement did not emit a single sound of laughter. The anxious moderator consulted her written notes for a third consecutive time. Ocasio-Cortez's confident smile tightened visibly by half a degree as she gave a slight nod. She verbally consented, inviting Mr. Shapiro to proceed by all means. The digital receipt. Shapiro immediately lifted his iPhone from the podium surface. He declared that their factual examination would officially commence with a verifiable receipt. He elevated the smartphone, aiming the glowing screen not toward the seated audience, but directly into the lens of the primary broadcast camera. The live television feed currently broadcasting across 3 major networks seamlessly transitioned to a tight close-up of the phone's digital display. The initial image presented was a widely recognized photograph that an estimated 200 million American citizens had previously viewed. It depicted a prominent woman gracefully climbing the grand staircase of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, beautifully framed by the clear September blue sky of New York City in the year 2021. She was elegantly draped in a sweeping white floor-length designer gown. Emblazoned across the back of this luxurious garment, written in stark red letters measuring 6 inches in height, were 3 highly provocative words: "Tax the rich." Shapiro addressed her directly, intentionally slowing his usual rapid pace to the deliberate, methodical speed he historically reserved for citing specific historical dates and financial figures. He established that on the 13th of September 2021, she had prominently attended the exclusive Met Gala. He detailed that the monetary value of a single entry ticket to this lavish affair ranged anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000 per individual guest. He noted that she was accompanied by her boyfriend at the time, who was now her legally recognized fiancé, Riley Roberts. He emphasized that Roberts had been permitted to attend this incredibly expensive gathering completely free of charge. He further documented that Anna Wintour, the legendary editor of Vogue magazine, had personally issued the highly coveted invitation. Finally, he identified Aurora James, the creator of a fashion company known as Brothers, as the specific individual who had custom-designed the controversial dress bearing the famous 3-word slogan. With a fluid motion, he swiped the phone's touchscreen. The broadcast immediately displayed a new, highly official document, a formal report generated by the United States House Ethics Committee, distinctly dated the 25th of July, 2025. Shapiro identified the paperwork for the crowd, emphasizing that the Congressional committee had reached a unanimous, bipartisan voting consensus. The legal conclusion explicitly stated that the Congresswoman had undeniably violated the stringent House gift rule. Consequently, she was officially mandated to pay a financial penalty of $2,733.28 directly to Brothers. And furthermore, she was ordered to remit an additional $250 to the Costume Institute to retroactively cover the cost of her fiancé's lavish meal. He clarified with lethal precision that these mathematical figures were not his personal calculations, but rather the indisputable, publicly recorded findings of the United States government. The mathematics of hypocrisy. As Ocasio-Cortez instinctively opened her mouth to mount a defense, Shapiro raised a single index finger in a manner that was almost polite rather than aggressive. signaling his intention to continue uninterrupted. He smoothly pivoted, stating that the final legal verdict was not actually the detail that fascinated him the most. He was far more interested in the raw mathematics hidden beneath the ruling. He swiped the screen once again to reveal deeper financial details. He meticulously explained that the gown possessed an original designer valuation of $1,300. However, a dedicated staff member operating within her congressional office had intentionally contacted the designer to aggressively negotiate a heavily reduced rental rate. The designer, Aurora James, ultimately acquiesced to the political pressure. Consequently, the extravagant dress was rented to the politician for a remarkably low sum of exactly $300. Shapiro read directly from the official report in full, noting the committee's finding that this massive price reduction was granted specifically due to the immense promotional value generated by the Congresswoman's massive political celebrity. He sternly reminded her that this transaction perfectly embodied the strict legal definition of an illegal, in-kind campaign gift bestowed upon a sitting member of Congress, which was the exact trigger for the ethics violation. He allowed the heavy legal terminology to hang in the silent auditorium without ever needing to raise his vocal volume. He then transitioned to the most devastating aspect of the entire controversy. He revealed that the independent vendor, Brothers, was not financially compensated until the 9th of March 2022. This payment occurred a staggering 6 months after the glittering gala had concluded. More damningly, he exposed that the sole motivating factor for the eventual payment in March was the inconvenient fact that the Office of Congressional Ethics had formally launched a probe into her finances during February. Her office had blatantly refused to pay the hard-working vendor until they were officially caught attempting to evade the bill. He locked his eyes directly onto hers, ensuring she felt the full weight of the hypocrisy. He summarized the horrific irony: she had proudly worn a $30,000 luxury ticket draped over a body wearing an unethically discounted dress to function as a walking, breathing billboard demanding aggressive taxation upon the wealthy elite. The political billboard was proudly displayed upon her back, but the actual financial burden of the stunt fell squarely upon a small black female designer operating out of Brooklyn. That struggling entrepreneur was forced to wait an agonizing 178 days just to receive her meager $300. The administrative error defense. Ocasio-Cortez finally located her speaking voice. Her left hand had subconsciously migrated back to twisting the diamond engagement ring sitting upon her finger. She spoke with the distinct rapid velocity characteristic of a desperate politician who had meticulously rehearsed this specific defensive maneuver well in advance of the confrontation. She fiercely argued that the delayed payments were nothing more than a simple administrative error originating within her complex office structure. She vehemently insisted that the Ethics Committee had entirely failed to discover any evidence of willful or malicious legal violations. She claimed they had only identified bureaucratic delays, which she proudly asserted she had personally taken full accountability for resolving. She attempted to pivot the narrative, dismissing his factual presentation as a toxic manifestation of right-wing gotcha culture. Shapiro ruthlessly intercepted her argument, repeating the phrase administrative error, while immediately returning to his trademark rapid-fire delivery. He systematically weaponized her own vocabulary against her. He rapidly listed an array of disgraced politicians, noting that administrative error were the exact identical words utilized by former Senator Robert Menendez when federal investigators discovered his private refrigerator stuffed entirely with solid gold bars. He pointed out that Maxine Waters had deployed the exact same phrasing to excuse her massive $68,000 campaign finance violation. He added that Jamie Raskin had also leaned on the identical excuse to justify his wife's staggering $1.5 million financial disclosure delay. Shapiro brilliantly observed that this specific tired phrase had been repeated by so many Democratic members of Congress during so many distinct finance scandals that it had effectively evolved into a reliable party slogan. He sarcastically proposed that they should consider formally updating the iconic Democratic donkey logo to reflect this new reality. A wave of genuine laughter rippled through the moderate section of the divided audience. In the second row, an attentive reporter furiously scribbled down the devastating donkey logo metaphor into his notepad. "The medium is the message." Shapiro seamlessly rotated the phone back toward the broadcast camera lens. The subsequent digital image was a specific social media tweet historically posted on the 13th of September 2021, authored directly by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The message consisted of precisely 4 words: "The medium is the message." Positioned directly adjacent to this philosophical tweet was a fully scanned copy of the corresponding invoice sent from Brothers, dated the 4th of October 2021. The document remained blatantly unpaid. Furthermore, it was aggressively stamped by the vendor's own personal bookkeeper with the humiliating phrase, "Outstanding second notice." Shapiro quietly and effectively agreed with her previous statement, affirming that the medium truly is the message, just as the perpetually unpaid invoice undeniably serves as a message of its own. A profound silence enveloped the massive room. He gently placed the mobile device face up upon the podium, ensuring the damning invoice remained continuously visible to the audience. However, he quickly announced that the scandalous dress payment was not actually the most intriguing financial anomaly hidden within her extensive political career. The truly fascinating monetary discrepancy had occurred 4 years prior to her appearance at the Met Gala, and it deeply involved the specific man she was currently preparing to marry. He shifted his piercing gaze directly toward the second row of the audience seating. Riley Roberts, positioned exactly 4 seats inward from the center aisle, stared downward at his own resting hands. Shapiro dramatically announced to the entire hall that the man in question was sitting right there among them. If you are currently watching this video and your jaw has literally hit the floor in sheer disbelief, violently smash that like button immediately. We are not even halfway through the devastating arsenal of truth concealed upon Ben Shapiro's phone tonight. Make absolutely certain you subscribe to this channel and activate all notifications, because the upcoming bombshell involves a highly suspicious check, a romantic boyfriend, and a desperate political campaign that was teetering on the absolute brink of total bankruptcy just 3 months before miraculously achieving international fame. Drop a comment below saying facts don't care if you possess the courage to witness what unfolds next. Trust me implicitly, you absolutely want to see this. The boyfriend and the bankruptcy. Shapiro confidently retrieved the iPhone once more. He addressed the Congresswoman, declaring his intention to thoroughly discuss the occupants of the second row, focusing specifically upon her fiancé. He mockingly reminded her that this was the exact same individual whose exorbitantly priced Met Gala admission she had conveniently forgotten to financially cover. He noted that the man in question was currently seated a mere 11 feet away from her podium, sarcastically assuming she had previously made his acquaintance. A wave of mild, uncertain laughter washed through the room, characteristic of an audience that remained deeply undecided regarding which political gladiator they ultimately supported. Roberts steadfastly refused to look upward. Shapiro began to lay out the devastating historical timeline starting in August of 2017. He noted that during this specific period, her long-shot campaign to represent the 14th Congressional District of New York was only about 4 months into its existence. Citing official FEC filings, he revealed she had successfully raised a meager sum of approximately $3,332.75 directly from the general public. However, during that exact same time frame, her operation had recklessly burned through approximately $591.27. He bluntly informed her that she was operating her political ambitions a terrifying $24,000 deep into the red. He painted a vivid picture of a vulnerable 8-year-old bartender, possessing absolutely zero congressional experience, foolishly attempting to challenge a deeply entrenched 1-0-term incumbent who commanded a massive $3 million financial war chest. She was desperate for an immediate influx of cash, and she required it faster than traditional fundraising could possibly provide. He swiped the screen, projecting a completely new, highly incriminating image onto the live broadcast. He documented that on the 9th of August 2017, a political action committee known as Brand New Congress PAC initiated a direct financial payment totaling exactly $3,000 to a specific individual named Riley Roberts. This suspicious transaction was officially labeled within the strict FEC filings under the highly ambiguous title of marketing consultant. He swiped the screen to reveal the next phase of the operation. Just 18 days later, on the 27th of August 2017, her own personal campaign committee executed a massive payment of $6,191.32 directly to a corporate entity legally registered as Brand New Congress LLC. This particular expenditure was conveniently categorized within the formal paperwork as strategic consulting. He swiped the device yet again. He revealed that on the 29th of September 2017, the original Brand New Congress PAC issued a secondary payment of $3,000 straight back to Riley Roberts, once again utilizing the identical marketing consultant justification. He deliberately placed the phone face up upon his podium to let the visual evidence simmer. He offered to clearly translate this complex financial choreography for the audience. He explained that her official campaign structure had actively paid a registered LLC. He then exposed the critical link: both the receiving LLC and the generous PAC were entirely controlled by the exact same human being, a man named Saikat Chakrabarti. He reminded everyone that this specific individual conveniently became her official congressional chief of staff a mere 3 months following these transactions. Ultimately, the affiliated PAC funneled the money directly into the pockets of her romantic boyfriend. The scheme revealed. He fiercely noted that within the rigorous world of actual prosecuting attorneys, this specific sequence of events is legally defined as a pass-through scheme. Furthermore, within the specialized realm of legitimate campaign finance lawyers, these 3 interconnected transactions are formally classified as an illegal circular contribution. He casually added that in everyday conversation, average citizens simply refer to it as money laundering. He delivered the punchline with devastating precision, apparently. Within her specific office culture, they simply refer to this highly illegal financial arrangement as casual dating. 2 distinct individuals seated within the designated press section gasped loud enough to be heard across the room. The previously smiling aide holding the Vogue binder immediately lost her joyful expression. Shapiro pressed his overwhelming advantage, moving to the specific aspect of the scandal that nobody could logically defend. He dismantled the professional credibility of Riley Roberts, noting that his actual career was entirely contained within the realm of web development. He specifically worked for an obscure digital company known as Homebinder.com, where his primary focus was strictly limited to user experience, design, architecture. Shapiro revealed he had personally investigated the man's LinkedIn profile right before Roberts frantically deleted the entire account. On the very same morning, the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation officially filed their legal complaint against the campaign. He exposed the hilarious reality that Roberts possessed a grand total of exactly 317 followers on the Twitter platform back in August of 2017. He aggressively pointed out to the Congresswoman that her fiancé possessed absolutely zero relevant marketing portfolio lacked any prior agency experience, and represented no actual public relations clients. Yet despite these glaring deficiencies, the official communications director for the PAC had publicly claimed that Roberts was specifically hired to manage critical social media engagement and drive massive subscriber growth. Shapiro mocked the absurdity of hiring a man with only 317 followers to command a national social media strategy. He flatly declared that Roberts was never functioning as a legitimate social media consultant. He was merely acting in his capacity as her romantic boyfriend. He aggressively pointed his finger toward the glowing iPhone screen. He detailed the impressive background of Saikat Chakrabarti, noting he was a highly intelligent founding engineer at the massive tech company Stripe, making him a bona fide Silicon Valley multimillionaire. Shapiro framed the ultimate logical dilemma. This brilliant technological mastermind was supposedly choosing to hire an absolute nobody with a pathetic 317 followers to serve as the exclusive, solitary marketing consultant for an enormous national PAC, responsible for funding 12 separate federal political candidates. Shapiro presented the only two possible realities. Either Mr. T. Chakrabarti was undeniably the most incompetent hiring manager in the entire recorded history of the American technology sector, or that specific $6,000 transfer was definitively an illegal, off-the-books financial reimbursement designed to rescue a failing political candidate who could no longer afford to keep her own campaign lights turned on. He challenged the Congresswoman to publicly select one of those two options, firmly asserting that absolutely no third explanation existed in reality. The outburst. That specific unbearable moment triggered Ocasio-Cortez to physically snap. She aggressively launched herself out of her seat, shoving her wooden chair backward with such immense physical force that it violently scraped against the polished stage floor. Her left hand finally abandoned its anxious grip upon her diamond engagement ring. She marched directly forward, positioning herself dangerously close to the very edge of her wooden podium. The raw, unbridled aggression emanating from her vocal cords was no longer a rehearsed theatrical performance. It was the genuine, desperate fury of a cornered woman who had instinctively decided in that exact microsecond that she would refuse to concede another single inch of ground. She fiercely jabbed her index finger into the empty air, separating them, declaring that his petty financial accusations were exactly the type of dirty tactics that wealthy oligarchs continually dispatch people like him to execute. She accused him of maliciously weaponizing 3 entirely random, insignificant invoices dating back to when she was merely a 28-year-old bartender. She reminded the crowd she was bravely attempting to run for public office against a powerful sitting Democratic incumbent armed with $3 million and a massive, corrupt Wall Street donor network. She screamed that he was intentionally attempting to manufacture a fake crime out of nothing. She furiously attempted to redirect the narrative toward what she considered the actual systemic crimes plaguing the nation. She passionately listed innocent children actively dying because they could not afford life-saving insulin medication. She screamed about the cruel reality of worker wages remaining completely stagnant for 4 agonizing decades. She condemned greedy billionaires who manipulated the system to pay lower effective tax rates than the exhausted bartender who physically served them their expensive cocktails. She attacked the bloated military-industrial complex, citing the Pentagon's scandalous inability to account for $800 billion missing dollars. She wept for the countless American mothers forced into absolute financial bankruptcy simply because their beloved child had the misfortune of contracting cancer. She powerfully declared that those systemic failures represented the true criminal acts within society. She argued passionately that every single minute they wasted debating a trivial $6,000 invoice was a precious minute stolen from combating the missing $800 billion. She concluded her ferocious counterattack by accusing Mr. Shapiro of faithfully executing the homework assignments assigned to him by the ultra-rich, claiming he had spent his entire existence doing exactly that. The progressive wing of the auditorium immediately exploded into chaotic, deafening support. The two NYU professors seated on the panel leaped instantly to their feet in solidarity. A young female supporter located in the fourth row frantically clapped both of her hands high above her head in pure adulation. Nearby, a prominent journalist working for the Atlantic magazine was already mentally drafting the glowing morning headline declaring how Ocasio-Cortez had brilliantly turned the tables upon her conservative attacker. The chaotic pandemonium ruled the Grand Hall for 15 uninterrupted seconds. She completely owned the atmosphere of the room. The surrounding network television cameras absolutely devoured the spectacular emotional display. Yet, Ben Shapiro merely waited. He refused to interrupt her passionate tirade. He offered no defensive hand gestures. He did not physically move a single muscle in his body. He remained perfectly still behind his podium, staring calmly at his iPhone, which now rested face down upon the wood, willingly allowing her to completely exhaust her 15 seconds of manufactured glory. The massive wave of audience applause steadily built to a roaring crescendo, eventually peaked, then inevitably faltered, and finally faded away entirely, behaving exactly the way applause always does when it runs out of logical momentum. When he finally chose to speak again, his famous rapid-fire delivery had completely vanished into the ether. It was replaced by a highly deliberate, methodical pacing that absolutely nobody residing within the echoing hall had ever witnessed from Ben Shapiro before. It was agonizingly slow. It was incredibly deliberate. It was the exact rhythmic pacing, a deeply personal secret that nobody in the room could possibly comprehend. Except for his older sister watching the live broadcast from her home of his own father, carefully plucking out the Summon Owansei, haunting opening notes of the Schindler's List theme song upon the upright Yamaha piano, located inside their tiny two-bedroom Burbank home during the specific year Ben turned 9 years old. Shapiro gently addressed the Congresswoman, stating his firm intention to answer her emotional outburst with genuine respect, because the severe topics she highlighted truly demanded serious respect. He openly validated her assertion that it is a tragedy when children die without access to insulin. He agreed completely that stagnant worker wages are a massive societal failure. He conquered her argument by agreeing that the Pentagon's inability to account for trillions of taxpayer dollars is absolutely unacceptable. He calmly reminded her that he had personally written extensive articles condemning every single one of those exact issues. He noted he had spent countless hours publicly arguing against those very same systemic failures. He even openly offered to debate her regarding all of those massive topics the very next morning on his massive podcast platform. He promised to provide her with 2 full hours of free, uninterrupted airtime, guaranteeing he would keep his phone turned completely off for the duration of the broadcast. Facts don't care. He took a slow, deep breath to center himself. He pointedly refused to look down at the mobile device resting near his hands. He pivoted the entire debate, clarifying that the fundamental question being contested upon the Cooper Union stage tonight was not whether the American system was fundamentally broken. Instead, the crucial question was whether the specific political woman who constantly preaches to America that the system is broken is, in fact, actively participating in the very corruption that is breaking it. He stated with deep regret that the ultimate question of whether she could ever be trusted to eradicate the influence of dark money from politics is definitively answered by examining whether her own personal campaign finances are equally dark. He logically destroyed her defense, stating she simply cannot simultaneously play the role of the curing doctor while actively acting as the infecting disease. She was forced to choose one identity or the other. He hammered home the brutal reality: the documented receipts, including her personal receipts, her fiancé's hidden receipts, her fashion designer's unpaid receipts, and her chief of staff's shadowy receipts, simply do not care about the beautiful emotional speech she just delivered to the crowd. He delivered his iconic catchphrase with lethal gravity, reminding her that facts simply do not care about her feelings. He noted, "They never have, and they never will." He philosophically argued that this harsh reality is not an act of cruelty, but rather an act of profound mercy. He concluded by stating that the cold, hard truth was the only actual entity existing inside that room tonight that truly gave a damn about protecting the hard-working bartender she used to be. The massive lecture hall descended into a silence so profound and absolute that the subtle electrical hum of the overhead chandelier became the loudest sound in the room. Leave a comment saying, "Facts don't care." If you have ever in your entire life witnessed a solitary man completely dismantle an entire political movement, utilizing nothing more than an iPhone, a meticulously researched paper trail, and the impeccable musical timing inherited from his father's piano playing, hit the subscribe button immediately. Because the absolute largest bombshell of the entire evening is rapidly approaching, and it involves a staggering sum of $885,000. The shell game. Shapiro confidently lifted the iPhone back into his hand. He informed the Congresswoman that he needed to establish absolute precision regarding one final detail before he officially introduced her to several specific individuals located inside the room, whom she had not yet had the pleasure of meeting. He chillingly clarified that the suspicious $6,000 transfer funneled to her fiancé was not merely an isolated, desperate transaction. It was merely a single, tiny line item deeply embedded within a much, much larger and far more sinister financial architecture. He revealed that this massive financial architecture actually possessed a formal name. In fact, it possessed two distinct names. He swiped the screen with deadly intent. He exposed the names of the entities Brand New Congress, PAC, and Justice Democrats PAC. He reiterated that both organizations were entirely founded and completely controlled by her associate, Saikat Chakrabarti. He noted that both PACs were instrumental in financially supporting her miraculous election victory. He revealed the damning detail that she personally sat on the executive board of the Justice Democrats organization from December 2017 all the way through June 2018. He pointed out that this was the exact same critical 6-month window during which the massive financial scheme he was about to thoroughly describe was actively operating at its absolute maximum velocity. He swiped the device again. He explained the complex legal landscape, noting that Brand New Congress PAC and Justice Democrats PAC aggressively solicited and raised massive financial donations directly from the general public. He reminded her that she had constructed nearly half of her entire political identity upon her supposedly deep understanding of campaign finance laws. Therefore, she was fully aware that federal law strictly requires all PACs to meticulously itemize every single one of their financial expenditures. Every single dollar flowing in and every single dollar flowing out must become a matter of permanent public record. He stated, "This is the uncompromising law dictated by the Federal Election Campaign Act of 1971. He swiped the phone one final time. He began to reveal the hidden trapdoor, explaining that operating directly alongside these two highly regulated PACs, both firmly under the control of Mr. Chakrabarti, were two completely separate corporate entities. These entities were legally registered as Brand New Congress LLC and Brand New Campaign LLC. He explained the fatal loophole to the silent crowd. Unlike PACs, corporate LLCs are absolutely not legally required to publicly itemize their internal financial spending. He warned that an LLC could easily accept a massive influx of $1 million and vaguely report the entire sum simply as internal consulting fees. He concluded by stating that, for the strict purposes of federal financial disclosure, an LLC operates entirely as a completely opaque black box. He calmly set the device down. Between 2017 and 2018, a highly calculated financial operation unfolded as two distinct political action committees methodically transferred a staggering $885,000 into a pair of limited liability companies. Every single one of these massive transactions was vaguely classified within official federal filings under the protective guise of strategic consulting. Brand New Congress PAC alone transferred $261,165.20 directly into the accounts of Brand New Congress LLC. Furthermore, Justice Democrats PAC shifted well over $600,000 into that exact same opaque corporate structure. Standing under the glow of the Cooper Union chandeliers, Ben Shapiro exposed the grim reality of this architecture. He explained that the moment those funds crossed the threshold into the LLCs, the money essentially vanished into a regulatory black hole. Federal watchdogs were instantly blinded. The enthusiastic grassroots donors who funded the progressive movement lost all visibility of their hard-earned contributions, and the American public was left entirely in the dark. The absolute only individual capable of tracing those missing funds was the single man who controlled all four intertwined entities, her very own Congressional Chief of Staff. Shapiro allowed the immense gravity of that statement to hang in the silent auditorium. He then detailed the legal community's devastating response to this labyrinthian financial network. The Coolidge-Reagan Foundation officially characterized the operation as a deceptive shell game. The National Legal and Policy Center, the specific watchdog organization that filed the initial FEC complaint, unequivocally called it the most blatant scheme they had ever witnessed to intentionally avoid transparency and accountability within federal campaign finance. Bradley Smith, a highly respected former chairman of the Federal Election Commission, declared the setup was almost certainly a massive reporting violation and quite likely a severe breach of strict contribution limits. However, the most chilling legal assessment came directly from former FEC Commissioner Hans von Spakovsky in a quoted interview with the Daily Caller. He stated that if the Justice Department formally determined this scheme was executed knowingly and willfully, both the Congresswoman and Mr. Chakrabarty could potentially face up to 5 years in federal prison per individual violation. The killing blow. With a swift, deliberate swipe of his phone screen, Shapiro projected the official FEC docket directly onto the live broadcast feed. The federal case number was clearly visible to millions, but more importantly, the case status read open in glaring, undeniable red letters. He informed the breathless hall that he had personally checked the official docket a mere 20 minutes before stepping onto the debate stage, proving the federal investigation remained highly active and under rigorous review. He masterfully dismantled the false narrative, continuously pushed by her communications director, who had spent the past 4 years falsely assuring journalists that the matter was entirely closed. The actual federal regulator had not closed anything at all. Pivoting his phone toward the primary camera lens, Shapiro displayed a digital artifact that he suspected the grand portrait of Abraham Lincoln, hanging on the wall behind them, would find particularly fascinating. It was a tweet published directly from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez' personal account on the 20th of January 2019. The message boldly proclaimed that big money in politics was the fundamental reason society lacked universal health care and basic justice, passionately condemning it as a corrupt cancer. Shapiro locked eyes with her and delivered the killing blow. That remarkably righteous tweet was posted exactly 21 days after a federal watchdog had filed a formal complaint, alleging her hand-picked chief of staff had illegally laundered $885,000 through his own LLC. He presented her with an inescapable, devastating binary choice. Either she had negligently placed a completely unvetted man into her most senior staff position, blindly handing him the keys to her entire political identity, or she was fully and completely aware of the massive financial laundering operation. He noted that in these types of conversations, there is rarely a third option. As her left hand returned to anxiously gripping her diamond engagement ring, she attempted to regain control, arguing with lowered velocity that the FEC matter was merely open. Shapiro cut her off with devastating, immovable calm, reiterating that the federal case was highly active, leaving her entirely cornered. He set the glowing phone down on the podium. He declared that the scandalous dress, the questionable payments to the boyfriend, the shadowy LLCs, and the missing $885,000, since her very first day as a member of Congress, she had continuously promised the American people that she would fiercely fight for working families. Shapiro distilled the entire evening down to one profound question. Would those same working families still vote for her if they truly understood exactly what her political career had cost them? After a heavy, dramatic pause, he announced that 3 of those specific working-class individuals were actually sitting in the room tonight, and he formally requested the moderator's permission to introduce them. This is the exact moment that forever broke the internet. If you are watching this video and you are not subscribed yet, you are about to miss the spectacular moment Ben Shapiro brings 3 real, verified working-class New Yorkers onto the stage to completely face down America's most followed progressive within her own home borough. Comment Long Island City 3 right now if you want to witness what authentic, undeniable working-class testimony actually looks like. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit your notifications, and do not move a muscle. The working-class witnesses. Eleanor Voss, the anxious moderator, carefully checked her notes and questioned if this maneuver fit the agreed-upon debate format. Shapiro confidently confirmed it did. Noting the producers possessed the names yesterday, the witnesses had been properly vetted by the Borough Voices Coalition, signed all necessary disclosure forms, and were completely unpaid for their appearance. Upon her slow nod of approval, 3 individuals stood up from the third row and walked to folding chairs waiting on the audience's left side of the stage. The network cameras pivoted instantly, and the massive hall finally understood the true purpose of those mysteriously empty seats. Shapiro turned directly to Ocasio-Cortez, noting she had spent 31 minutes claiming to be the definitive voice of working-class New Yorkers. He introduced the 3 uncompensated residents from her own borough, revealing that in 2019, each of their lives would have been fundamentally changed for the better by the Amazon HQ2 project. He stepped aside, allowing Rosa Delgado to speak first. Rosa, a 4-1-year-old Hispanic single mother, originally from Astoria, Queens, did not require any written notes. She recounted living in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment in Sunnyside, sleeping on a kitchen pull-out bed so her 2 young daughters could share the only bedroom. Seeking a better life, she spent $2,400 on a high-interest credit card to earn a logistics and supply chain management certificate from LaGuardia Community College during exhausting night classes after working the Delta baggage line at JFK Airport. Her entire future hinged on a $55,000 a year logistics job at the planned Amazon campus in Long Island City. Instead, she watched from her kitchen table as Ocasio-Cortez smiled brightly on television, celebrating the day Amazon walked away as a massive political victory. Holding up her now useless college certificate, Rosa devastatingly noted that the future she had bled 14 months for was killed by a woman who falsely claimed to protect her. She stated she wasn't there for petty revenge, but because she simply did not know what to tell her daughters when they asked when they were finally moving to a real apartment. She sat down. Next, Marcus Chen stood up. He was a 3-4-year-old journeyman electrician's apprentice belonging to IBEW Local 3. He testified that the Amazon build would have secured 800 American union jobs, providing 4 years of solid work at $85 an hour with full benefits. The very day the Congresswoman celebrated the project's demise, Chen was sitting in his union hall with his father, his uncle, and 3 fellow apprentices. He directly informed Ocasio-Cortez that his father, who had proudly voted for her, believing she was a true champion of the working man, had not voted for a Democrat since. Neither had his uncle nor the other apprentices. He placed the blame for that political shift squarely on her shoulders, explicitly stating, "The Republicans didn't do it. She did." He sat down. Finally, Kareem Williams took the floor. He was a 8-year-old Army veteran who had served 2 grueling tours in Iraq, the second in Mosul. He had returned home to an Astoria that had cruelly priced his 6-7-year-old renting mother out of her apartment building. Armed with a military logistics specialty and a veteran's preference, he had been negotiating an Amazon warehouse manager position starting at $68,000 with a clear path to $120,000 within 5 years. That was the exact type of money that would allow a black veteran from Queens to finally buy his mother a home. Instead, on the exact morning Amazon officially pulled out, Kareem was forced to drive a Lyft for 14 exhausting hours just to make $96. Staring her down, he demanded a formal apology, not for himself, but for the entire borough she had betrayed. He sat down, and the hall fell completely silent. The final verdict. Shapiro picked up his iPhone one final time, swiping to display a devastating 4-image montage to the national broadcast feed. It featured Ocasio-Cortez in her Tax the Rich Met Gala gown, Rosa Delgado's worthless LaGuardia certificate, the open federal investigation docket, and a scathing quote from Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo condemning a small group of politicians who put their own narrow political interests above their community. Shapiro weaponized the horrific statistics of her legacy. Her political brand had cost New York 25,000 high-paying jobs, 800 critical union positions, and a staggering $27 billion in projected tax revenue. In exchange, she received a luxurious Manhattan apartment funded by $30,000 gala tickets. While a single mother continued to sleep on a kitchen pullout, as Shapiro uttered the word brand, Ocasio-Cortez's hand finally released her engagement ring, letting her arm drop lifelessly to her side. The diamond caught the chandelier light once and went completely dark. She never lifted her hand again, and the entire hall instantly knew the fight was over. Stepping forward, Shapiro demanded a simple one-word yes or no answer to 3 piercing questions. Was she fighting for working women, while a black designer waited 178 days for a $300 payment? Was she fighting dark money when her campaign secretly funneled $6,000 to her fiancé? And was she fighting for New York when she sacrificed 25,000 jobs and billions in revenue just to build a social media hashtag? While 3 of those displaced workers sat a mere 10 feet away, for 11 agonizing seconds, the most vocal progressive in America said absolutely nothing. She looked desperately at her fiancé, who refused to meet her gaze, and she looked at Rosa Delgado, who stared back, completely unblinking. When she finally attempted to deflect by arguing about the fundamental framing of the questions, Shapiro calmly yielded his remaining time to the Long Island City 3, placing his phone face down on the desk and seamlessly folding his hands. As the panel chairman announced, the debate was concluded without a formal resolution. Her communications director was already frantically drafting a damage control statement in the wings. The memo leaned heavily on political buzzwords like right-wing, partisan, and manufactured, completely avoiding any mention of the unpaid dress, the LLC scheme, or Rosa Delgado. Three of the moderating professors quietly closed their laptops without looking at her, while the fourth simply walked off the stage entirely. Ocasio-Cortez gathered her papers with trembling hesitation, ignoring the working-class witnesses, her fiancé, and the towering portrait of Lincoln before exiting through the stage-left door in total silence. The fallout. The fallout was immediate and struck in three distinct layers. Digitally, hashtags dominated national trending charts within 40 minutes, while Rosa's heartbreaking testimony amassed 33 million views before midnight. In a panic, Riley Roberts deactivated his Twitter account, and Saikat Chakrabarty's profile was completely scrubbed from his employer's website. Institutionally, the dress designer publicly confirmed the delayed payment dates. Cuomo tweeted a viral validation saying, "I tried to tell you," and the Office of Congressional Ethics officially announced they were reopening their rigorous review. Personally, Ben Shapiro ignored over 1,000 frantic interview requests. He quietly left Cooper Union, boarded a red-eye flight out of New York, and drove a rental car straight to a modest two-bedroom home in residential Burbank. Inside, his 1-year-old father, David, sat at the same upright Yamaha piano he had purchased in 1990 to teach a young Ben the complex rhythm of music. David, a working composer who had spent 20 years writing music for car commercials, played the haunting Schindler's List theme. He gently told his son he was too kind by letting the politician leave the stage without forcing her to say the displaced workers' names aloud. Ben softly replied that she never would have said them, sat down on the wooden bench next to his father, and began to beautifully play a Bach invention. That crisp morning, a kid from Burbank reminded the entire nation of a profound lesson Abraham Lincoln had preached. In that very same hall in 1860, a great nation cannot be built upon the shoulders of people whose receipts you refuse to read. He proved that the Constitution is not a costume, the working class is not a disposable hashtag, and justice is not a mere brand. It turned out the absolute best person to remind a political movement of its actual math was a kid who learned arithmetic on his father's piano in a modest suburb, where the median income was just $42,000. If you made it this far, you just heard the unbelievable night. A kid from Burbank used an iPhone and the unvarnished truth to teach Americas. Most followed progressive what receipts actually look like. Smash that like button if you truly believe the truth still belongs to the people who can successfully do the math. Subscribe to this channel. Comment Lincoln was listening if you think this was the greatest takedown in debate history. And share this with the working New Yorker in your life. God bless our veterans. God bless the working families of Long Island City. And God bless the kid from Burbank who still believes that facts simply don't care about your feelings. They never did, and that is exactly why they are facts.